Before I begin, just for some remarks, and then I know following the commissioner's comments, Dr. Shepard, the president of our board, is just going to give some closing remarks for the day. One thing that we're obviously very happy about in terms of the broad-based nature of a lot of these efforts and all the work that we're all doing with one another, we continually have new membership joining us as well. And so recently we have a number of organizations in recent months that have joined. We're actually proud to announce today, and in our release, along with the comments from the commissioner, we're able to announce the joining of the Generic Pharmaceutical Association, GPHA. I think this is important, as well as, and I apologize because we've been so busy. There are so many organizations that are now getting more and more involved, both formally and informally. And so we're really, we're excited about this fact that this really has no boundaries, as we talked about in our comments earlier today, and we've discussed all day today. I'm sure the commissioner can attest to. But in the fight against counterfeits, the role of government regulators play cannot be overstated. Government agencies like the U.S. FDA work tirelessly to ensure safety, security, and the quality of prescription drugs are maintained in the U.S. each and every day. Here to share her thoughts on the global public health threat is the 21st Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Margaret Hamburg. As a top official in the U.S. FDA, Dr. Hamburg is committed to strengthening programs and policies that enable the FDA to carry out its mission to protect and promote the public health. The second woman to be nominated to this position, should be credit for that. Dr. Hamburg is an experienced medical doctor, scientist, and public health advocate. Among Dr. Hamburg's considerable achievements in this work has been the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. In this position, she improved services for women and children, promoted needle exchange programs to reduce the spread of HIV, and initiated the nation's first public health bioterrorism defense program. Her most celebrated achievement was curbing the spread of tuberculosis, which resurged as a major public health threat in the 1990s. As a result of this, Dr. Hamburg's reforms, New York City's TB rate fell significantly over a 5-year span. Her innovative approach, which included sending healthcare workers to patients' homes to make sure that they maintained and completed their drug regimen, is now a model for health departments around the country. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner Hamburg.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I know I'm coming at the end of a very long day, action-packed agenda, but a very, very important set of issues I know have been addressed today, and I'm just pleased to be able to join in on this very important topic. The work of the Partnership for Safe Medicines, particularly your work reaching out to consumers, goes a long way in our collective fight to eliminate harmful and unsafe medicines and promote the quality and efficacy of every product consumed by our friends, families, and neighbors, which is why I'm really happy that today we can strengthen the partnership between the FDA and your organization. And we're very, very pleased that the Partnership for Safe Medicines is a partner in FDA's Counterfeit Alert Network. After all, we have a common mission: to ensure the safety and efficacy of drug and medical products, and to secure the increasingly complex global supply chain that so many of our drugs navigate before they arrive in our pharmacies, in our hospitals, and in our homes. So it's encouraging to me to see so many of you here today discussing an issue that's so important to the future of public health, particularly in our increasingly globalized world. I know that Special Agent Nancy Kennedy from our Office of Criminal Investigations has already spoken to you about some of our ongoing activities at the FDA, but I really do welcome the opportunity to offer some perspective of my own. As you can imagine, when the modern FDA was created by Franklin Delano Roosevelt back in 1938, the world was a very different place. And although the fundamental mission of our agency has not wavered, the issues we address on a daily basis look very different than they did to my predecessor decades ago. I think that this is a particularly challenging time. We're seeing tremendous breakthroughs in science and technology, an explosion of knowledge and capabilities from many fields of research, innovation, and from industry. And coming from around the world, for better or for worse, globalization has affected everything that we do, which means that to address the range of critical public health tasks before us, including the important one being discussed here today, we must adapt to the powerful forces shaping our modern world. We must equip our agency to fulfill its mission in a fundamentally different and far more complex environment. So one of my chief priorities as commissioner since I took this job now almost 18 months ago has been to accelerate the transformation of the FDA into a regulatory agency fully capable of promoting and protecting health in the 21st century. And of course, doing that requires a clear set of principles, a guiding force, if you will. And for me, that guiding force is public health. Ever since I began my career in public health back in New York City, as you already heard in my introduction, now some 20 years ago, I really have operated from a very specific set of principles, principles that are fundamentally intertwined with my background in public health, and that today help me to position the FDA as a public health agency. And understandably, sometimes people ask, well, what does this really mean? So let me just briefly say, the Institute of Medicine, one of the premier health organizations in our country and around the world, has defined the mission of public health as, quote, fulfilling society's interest in assuring the conditions in which people can be healthy. And to be healthy, people need access to a safe and nutritious food supply and to innovative, safe, and effective medical products. The FDA's job is first and foremost to support this access, and in doing so, to promote health, prevent illness, and prolong life. And as a public health agency, we must prevent problems before they occur. We must focus on outcomes for individuals and for populations. We must balance risks versus benefits. We must address unmet public health needs. And we must prioritize partnerships and multidisciplinary approaches to find meaningful and sustainable solutions to the complex challenges that we face. Both consumers and industry groups have a tremendous stake in a strong FDA that takes science-based action on behalf of public health, actions that are transparent and can inspire trust in the public whose health we're trying to protect. So this is the spirit in which I lead the FDA, and it's the spirit I bring to this important issue of counterfeit drugs and drug safety. So now that I've told you a little bit about my approach to my job as commissioner, let me turn more specifically to the topic at hand. As you know, the issue of counterfeit drugs is one of both domestic and international concern. I think it's really quite astounding, some of the numbers that are out there. In some parts of the world, some 30 to 50% of drugs that are being used to treat serious diseases are actually counterfeit. And it's really, I think, hard to know the full dimensions of the problem. Estimates vary considerably, and we need more surveillance and data to truly define the magnitude and scope of the problem. But one thing that I think we all can agree on is that it's a very real problem, and sadly, it's growing every day. Drug counterfeiting, diversion, cargo theft, and economically motivated adulteration are crimes of opportunity. And the opportunity is flourishing because of the dramatic way our world has changed in a relatively short period of time. In the past decade or so, the pharmaceutical industry has shifted a large part of its manufacturing operations and supply sourcing overseas. Today, nearly 40% of the drugs Americans take are imported, and nearly 80% of the active ingredients in the drugs that are on the American market come from overseas. And in addition to the growth in the volume of imports, there's been a dramatic increase in the variety and complexity of the imported products. So as a result, the supply chain from the raw materials to the finished products has become more complex and in some ways more mysterious, involving a web of repackagers and distributors in a variety of locations. And like any chain, the drug supply chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And the proliferation of additional handlers, suppliers, and middlemen creates new entry points through which contaminated, adulterated, and counterfeit products can infiltrate the drug supply. And this, in my view, is simply unacceptable. When our agency approves drugs based on scientific evidence and federal legal standards, the American people have every right to expect that the medicine they rely on for treatment is exactly what the package and label says that it is, a medicine that has been carefully evaluated by the FDA in terms of its safety, efficacy, quality, and purity. Drug counterfeiting involves larceny and fraud on several levels. Certainly, it involves theft against the drug manufacturer, but perhaps even more importantly, it robs the American people of the faith and confidence they deserve to have in drug products they believe are FDA approved. Passing off a fake medical product or stealing it for redistribution on a gray market is a direct and indirect threat to public health. Fake medical products may contain too much, too little, or the wrong active ingredient, and could contain toxic ingredients. They can also increase the likelihood of drug resistance, and they may prevent patients from getting the real medical products that they need to alleviate suffering and to save lives. Counterfeits, diversions, and cargo theft are all part of a growing criminal enterprise, which also includes the deliberate adulteration of drugs and consumer products to maximize profits, and potentially other, as yet unrecognized threats that I hope we can prevent, but that we must be mindful of the possibility. We've seen that the threat from economically motivated adulteration, counterfeiting, and cargo threat is very real. And unfortunately, we know that the results can be tragic. In Haiti, Panama, and Nigeria, many children died due to cough syrup and teething medication poisoned with diethylene glycol. In 2008, as I'm sure you all know, adulterated heparin caused injury and some deaths in patients throughout the world. Earlier this year, patients received counterfeit over-the-counter diet pills that had an ingredient that in fact was from prescription diet pills. Patients with serious cardiac conditions or certain cardiac conditions were at great risk if they took these pills that they purchased over the counter as directed because they would actually be ingesting a dangerous dose of the prescription version. It is sad to realize that we live in a world in which some criminals are willing to maximize profits by placing poisons in products like infant formula, toothpaste, and medically necessary drugs. But it is a reality that we must face. And more importantly, it is a reality that we must become more proactive in dealing with.